Following on from my video last week where I looked at the ToyBiz 12-inch Punisher action figure under the Marvel Films or the Marvel Studios brand, I'm going to revisit another figure in this line, which was the Blade 2 12-inch action figure. And as I discussed in the video last time, ToyBiz clearly wanted to market this line around the success of the burgeoning collection of films that were coming out under the Marvel Comics banner. But at this point there hadn't been that many films released. But one of the standout films was Blade and its sequel, Blade 2. The first film, Blade, actually predates both X-Men and Spider-Man and was something of a surprise hit, and not a great many people realised that it was based in fact on a Marvel comic. And even by the time of the sequel, this still wasn't a closely made link or association as we would expect today. The Marvel brand at this time was still seen as being cartoonish and childish, and these films were much more action horror films. And whilst Blade was an unexpected hit, Blade 2 had a lot of expectation around it, and the film met those expectations, at least in terms of box office returns. It surpassed its predecessor, and having a release in 2002, was a prime candidate for this line of 12-inch action figures from ToyBiz. So without further ado, let's take a look at the figure itself. The packaging is very unusual. It's in this slightly trapezoid kind of shape, and it's mostly all a display window because it's a very thin piece of plastic with two chunky plastic ends that are held together with these plastic pins. Now, as I mentioned last time, if you lose the pins, then this becomes a bit of a nightmare as the whole thing just starts to unravel and fall apart because it's not very solid. At the bottom of the packaging, there would normally be a very slim piece of card with the character's name and maybe the film logo. Sadly though, I seem to have lost mine, as I've also lost the plastic pins in the bottom of this, so you can see the plastic's got really damaged and yeah, isn't holding together too great. On the reverse of the packaging, we can see through the window the piece of card that is folded over a couple of times, so it's quite thick because this is what holds the figure in place. But on the reverse of it, we can see a photo of the figure, which has sort of been greyed out there, and there's also an image from the film poster. And then there's a few bits and pieces telling us about the character and about the film. And as I attempt to unleash the figure, you can see the problems you have if you lose those plastic pins, because obviously I've lost mine, and you can see the damage that's been done to the case and the way that everything just kind of falls apart pretty quickly. It's very, very fragile, that case. It's not strong or sturdy at all, so yeah, you do have to be careful. And so, first impressions out of the box, yeah, very, very impressive. You can see straight away that a lot of care and attention has been given to this figure. There's lots of visual little details that have just been picked up on and really expanded on, and it just looks absolutely fantastic. First off, let's take a moment to consider the head sculpt. This looks absolutely brilliant with the shades on, but the shades, which are supported by a rubber band at the back, can be lifted up or taken off to have a closer look. And here we get to see the full sculpt. And I have to say, for my money, this is one of the most impressive sculpts I've ever seen. I mean, I would even go as far as to say that this would give Hot Toys a run for their money. I think the likeness here is eerily spot on. This is a fantastic sculpt, and I think it's definitely caught Wesley Snipes. I think all the little nuances are absolutely perfect, right down to the eyes. So I'm absolutely delighted with this. I would go as far as to say this is one of the best likenesses of any figure in my collection. What's more, I think the tailoring, as with the Punisher figure before him, is absolutely top notch. I think this is a fantastic looking figure. I love the leather trench coat and how the lapels arc out. The coat is very similar to what we saw with the Punisher figure, but there are some subtle differences. For example, and I love this, the interior lining has this red material, which is absolutely fantastic. This looks brilliant. Of course, it's very screen accurate, but it just really enhances this figure and just gives that splash of colour that's just really very cool. Now, once again, the jacket does have to contend with trying to wrap around the body and its padding underneath, which can be a little bit tricky, but to be fair with Blade, it's not really meant to close at any point, and there's no buttons on it to do that. So I think when it's left open, it looks pretty solid. Admittedly, it does look a little bit chunky because it's contending with the layers underneath, but for me, I'm very happy with this. Another feature I really love about this trench coat is the fact that it has a wire at the bottom of it, so you can mould it and put it into different shapes if you want. So if you want it flaring out or turning inwards, you can do that. You might also notice that on his right leg, you start to see some of the accessories. He's got these stakes here, and of course he has his boomerang blade as well. Each stake is individual and can be removed, but they sit nice and snugly on an elastic band around his leg there, so there's no danger of them slipping out or slipping up and down. This holds its place very, very nicely. The jacket, of course, can be removed, but whereas with the Punisher there was little cufflinks to undo the buttons there to help take the coat off, this time there's no buttons, there's no aid to get off, but that said, it does come off quite easily. You'll notice as well there's also a hole in the back here for the sword to slide into place down his back. Very cool. And here he is without the jacket. So we have the option for two distinctive looks of Blade from this film. Personally, I prefer him with the jacket, but here you get to see more of his body armour and his puffy jacket underneath. And I have to say they've done a really nice job with this puffy jacket. It is quite quilted, it feels quite padded, which is excellent. And overall, I think this looks pretty good. But you might notice that there's a bit of a gap between his torso and his trousers, and we can see the body underneath. I'm not sure if this is on all figures or whether it's just mine, but obviously this is a bit unsightly and does ruin the look a little bit. And again, there is a bit of a gap there between his glove and his sleeve on his right arm. I also have some mixed feelings about the bombs that are on his chest here. It's a nice detail, it's great that they've actually ripped this from the film and put it in there to really distinguish it. And it's nice that each of these is an individual piece that's been sewn in, but it kind of looks a bit clunky and I don't know whether I'd always want them there. There's some more nice detailing on the back of the head. We've got his tattoos and of course the way his hair is cut there is absolutely fantastic. Admittedly, the elastic band that's holding the shades in place are a little bit jarring, and I've not tried removing this elastic band to see whether they'd stay on his face otherwise, so I'm not going to take that chance, but you could experiment. One of the things I really love about the figure though is the fact that it does have the sword, and it's got those little hoops there to hold it in place, which is great. And for the most part, they do hold it in place just with gravity, it just sits in there nice and easily, but sometimes if you do play around with it a little bit, it can slide through. I love all the detailing in this body armour as well, so if you move the bombs aside there's a little zip here that you can pull down to unfasten it, and there's a little bit of velcro underneath on the top part, and you can then see his puffer jacket underneath, and of course you can then unzip that if you wanted. So you could remove this completely if you wanted and put something else in there and maybe create a different look for this figure. Maybe it could be used as a Blade 1 or even a Blade Trinity figure if you had the right pieces to put in its place. And you can see there's actually even pockets on the puffer jacket there again. They're not functioning ones, but you know, it's a nice little detail to have. Talking of nice little details, there's also some little poppers here as well. I don't think they do anything, I'm not quite sure why they're there, but it's a cool little extra detail, and it shows there's a level of care and attention that's gone into this figure. The belt on the trousers is quite nicely done. It's not a functioning buckle, but it looks like it is, which is pretty cool. And you'll notice there's also his gun there, which I've attached with my own elastic band because I think I lost the original connection, which looks a little bit unsightly, I grant you, but I'll remedy this with some nice black material to hold it in place. And at the bottom of his left leg we can see the leather strap that's linked up to the belt there that holds the stakes in place. And speaking of the stakes, you can see here how easily it is to remove these and how each one is an individual piece, which is fantastic. You'll also notice his boomerang blade here, which you can just easily remove, and which folds out just like in the film to reveal the whole boomerang. So let's take a look at some of these accessories, because like the Punisher, he is armed and dangerous. He has his shotgun, an automatic firing pistol, his boomerang blade, his sword of course, and his Uzi. By comparison, it's not quite as much as what came with the Punisher, but this is everything you see in the film. His sword is very, very nicely done. There's lots of lovely little detailings on the handle there, and when you pull it out of its sheath you can see the sword in all its glory. It's a little bit bland in terms of the blade itself, but like I said, the little details on the hilt are absolutely fantastic. They've done a really nice job with the paint apps on this and it looks brilliant. And he holds the sword absolutely perfectly, which is interesting because they've recycled the hands here that we see on the Punisher figure. But I have to say I really like this mold because it seems to work with every weapon you give him. The grip is always firm and tight and somehow always manages to look good. And case in point, here he is with the shotgun. He's able to actually hold this with his trigger finger on the trigger and the remainder of the barrel in his other hand. And this is a really nice tight fit and it looks fantastic. The other nice feature of the shotgun, of course, is that you can put the stakes in there as well. These take a little bit of manoeuvring, but they just pop in and yeah, they look pretty cool. Here he is with both automatic weapons in each hand, and again you can see fingers go onto the trigger and they look fantastic. It looks like a perfect fit every single time, and this is really cool. And you get an idea of some of the dynamic poses you can put him in here. I think the other thing to point out is that he stands freely and without the aid of a stand. He's well balanced and his joints are tight enough to be able to hold his postures, but loose enough to be quite malleable. And so there you have it. For me, this is another super strong entry and pretty fantastic line. When you put this guy next to Punisher, you've got the beginnings of a really special collection. And I have to give ToyBiz top marks for producing a figure of this quality at this time, and at a comparatively low price point as well. These figures have aged very well, and they do attract a high price point on the secondary market, but if you persevere, you can still find them, and for a reasonable price. And I think that both Blade 2 and the Punisher figures are well worth your time. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like, and remember to subscribe as there'll be plenty more videos soon.